Hello and welcome to another Mike Oldfield tier list. It's a Mike Oldfield related tier list, I should say, because this is 8 albums which I have in my collection which, although they're Mike Oldfield's music, they're done by tribute bands and other artists, and they're all cover albums of his music. So I just thought it would be a nice little mini sequel to my previous tier list. I thought I'd explore some of the albums which cover Mike Oldfield's music. So these range from around 1975 up until the present day, 2024. There's 8 albums altogether. I'll go through each one and I'll tell you what I think of them and what I like and what I dislike about them, and I'll give you like a mini backstory about each album. So first up we have the orchestral Tubular Bells. Now this was done in 1975 and it was done on Richard Branson's request because Mike Oldfield was taking quite a while to make new music and produce new albums. So in order to keep Mike Oldfield's music in the limelight, Richard Branson decided that he was going to put out these albums, these orchestral ones, just to tie people over and to keep the popularity of Mike Oldfield's music going. So the first one was the orchestral Tubular Bells. Now this is arranged for orchestra by David Bedford, who's worked with Mike Oldfield on some of his albums and used to be in a band with Mike Oldfield, Kevin Ayers and the Whole World. And it is performed by the Royal Philharmonic Orchestra with Mike Oldfield cameoing on guitar on the end of side 2. This album, in some parts it works really well. In other parts I don't think it works quite as well as it should. The trouble with this album is Tubular Bells was more of a rock album and it had slightly quieter passages in it. So the quieter bits work better, but the rockier parts don't work as well, I don't think, on the orchestral Tubular Bells. So I enjoy it. It's not one I would go to quite often. I put it on every now and again just to, just to, as a novelty, or if I haven't heard it for a while, I think, oh, I'll put it on and have a listen, but I certainly don't enjoy it as much as the original Tubular Bells. So I'm going to put it as good. It's not terrible, but it's not excellent or very good either. It's kind of, it's just good. Now the second album, it's never been officially released, but there is a bootleg recording of it on YouTube, which I downloaded and I put onto a CD. Now there's a lot of debate on whether the information about this album is accurate. According to the notes, it was again performed by the Royal Philharmonic Orchestra, but apparently this version isn't that version, it's a different one, but they've mislabeled it. But regardless, the orchestral Ridge, doesn't matter which version you listen to. I've heard my version I've got here, and I've also heard a forthcoming official release version. I had the pleasure of listening to it at the Ridge convention a couple of weeks ago, and they sound quite similar. So, but the point being is, I think the album Ridge, it actually works a lot better for orchestra. A lot of the passages work so much better than the orchestral Tubular Bells. So I'm going to put this one slightly higher. I'm going to put it in very good because this album does work a lot better for orchestra and it's a bit more enjoyable. So fast forwarding to 2019. Now this is a tribute band called Tubular Tribute, and these are led by a very talented Spanish guitarist called Ruben Alvarez. He's very faithful to Mike Oldfield's style of playing, In fact, he looks a little bit like a young Mike Oldfield with the beard and the long hair. But he's got all these mannerisms and his guitar styles and his way of playing very, very good. And this is a live album. It actually comes on a CD and a accompanying DVD. But for the purposes of this tier list, I'll just stick to the audio only version. So with this album as well, you get the bonus of hearing a few Mike Oldfield tracks which Mike Oldfield himself never played live. You've got bits of Return to Omadon. There's like a little medley, a cut down version, and that sounds really good. You've got Hurgast Ridge, which Mike Oldfield only ever played a very small section once, and this is actually a longer bit that Tubular Tribute play, and they play it wonderfully. And you get bits of Amarok, which Mike Oldfield's never played live either. It's a very good concert. It's on for about 2 hours, and like I say, the music is played almost to perfection. It's very good. And you get a nice surprise guest appearance by Barry Palmer, who sung on Mike Oldfield's Discovery album, and he also did a couple of singles with him as well. So the band members, you've got Ruben Alvarez, you've got Richard Garcia, who plays keyboards, you've got Ruben's wife, Ariane, who sings and she plays trumpet, and you've got obviously other talented musicians who play drums, bass guitar and such like. The only criticism I've got is Ariane's vocals. She's a very good vocalist, no doubt about it, but she doesn't really speak a lot of English, and when she's singing, a lot of her words are like broken English, and some of them are a little bit unfathomable, hard to understand. But she does a great job singing though, and also she plays trumpet as well on pieces like Hurgast Ridge, and she's very, very good. All in all, these are a brilliant band. I've met Ruben, I've met Ariane, and I've met Richard at the Mike Oldfield convention, and they're lovely people, and they're such a great tribute band to Mike Oldfield's music, and I thoroughly enjoy putting this CD on. So I'm going to put this one as excellent. I highly recommend any Mike Oldfield fan who's never heard of this band or haven't got this CD. It's an essential purchase. You won't be disappointed. So a year later, we'll have the Tubular World version of Tubular Bells. Now this was done because there was a documentary film made by Paul Harris, who was one of the editors of the Mike Oldfield fanzine called Dark Star, and what they wanted to do was they wanted to make a documentary about the making of Tubular Bells and the early years of Virgin Records and the Manor recording studio. But unfortunately they couldn't get any of the rights to include the original music of Tubular Bells in the documentary. So what they'd done was they decided to re-record the whole album, but they brought on musicians who have worked with Mike Oldfield in the past, and they brought on a lot of musicians from the Tubular Tribute Band and also other Mike Oldfield tribute bands and fans of his music to all participate and re-record this Tubular Bells album. And the results are fantastic. The album deviates slightly at times from the original album. That's because each artist who performs on this album have put their own kind of unique stamp and personality on the album, but it works very, very well. You've got people on this album like Les Penning, you've got Rick Fenn, Tom Newman, Ruben Alvarez, you've got Robert Reed, you've got the late, great, sadly missed Phil Spaulding, you've got Manu Herrera, you've got members of Tubular Bells for Two, all these wonderful musicians who are also fans of Mike Oldfield. They all play on this album, and disc 1 is the album in its entirety, split into part 1 and 2 like the original, but Tom Newman's done across the board. He's done like his own mix of the album, so it's got that consistency. The second disc is Tubular Bells. The tracks have been split up though, much like Mike Oldfield did on the 2003 re-recording. So each track's individually numbered and named, and each tribute artist do their little bits. So for instance, Tubular Tribute might do one track, and then Phil Spalding, Robert Reed, Les Penning, they'll contribute to other tracks. And it might sound like it's going to be a bit of a mishmash, but what they've done is they've mixed each part themselves, but they've kept true to all the segues, so it actually does flow as one continuous piece, even though a lot of musicians were involved in a lot of different parts. But the end results are brilliant. It really, really does work, and I would say it's one of the best tribute albums of Tubular Bells I've ever heard. And like I've said, they used the music from this album in the documentary film which they made, which incidentally is a great documentary film. I highly recommend it. It's on for 4 hours, and you might think, oh God, that's a long time. But if you're into that kind of stuff, when you're watching the documentary, it flies over. So they released the DVD of the documentary, but they also put out the soundtrack album from the documentary, which is this CD of the re-recording of Tubular Bells. So obviously I still like the original Tubular Bells better than this one, even though I thoroughly do enjoy this one. So I'm going to still put this as excellent, but it's going to come just before Tubular Tribute's live album. Next up, in 2002, we'll have Robin A. Smith's Tubular Bells Reimagined. Now this one is to accompany a live show which is still going at the moment. It's the music from the live show, and it is an enjoyable album. I do really like it, but I think this one deviates a little too much from the original. There's parts of it that sound really fresh, and I think they work really well. There's other parts where I think it slightly goes on a little bit, it kind of deviates a little bit too much from the album. The caveman section on part 2, I'm not really keen on this version, but there is some nice ambient pieces within the music which do add to it a little bit. But if I'm honest, I would say I probably prefer the Tubular Worlds re-recording of Tubular Bells than this one. But that's not to say I dislike this one. I still enjoy it when I do listen to it. It's Robin Smith's Tubular Bells Reimagined, the 50th anniversary recording. That's what it's titled as. So I'm going to put this one, I'm going to put it as good, but I'm going to put it above the orchestral Tubular Bells. Incidentally, Robin Smith's worked with Mike Oldfield on various albums such as Voyager. Plus he also conducted the Tubular Bells 2 premiere at Edinburgh Castle. He played instruments on the Tubular Bells 3 premiere at Horse Guards Parade, and he's been involved with the Millennium Berlin 2000 live show, and most recently he was involved with Mike Oldfield's stellar performance at the 2012 London Olympics. So Robin's worked quite extensively with Mike Oldfield for a number of years. And as I've said, it's a decent album. So I think, in all fairness, I'm going to put it as good. Next up, we have the Tubular All Stars. Now this album came out in 2023, and this is like a greatest hits Mike Oldfield. It's all different tracks from different parts of his career, different eras. So you've got like a lot of things from the early days, you've got right up to present day. And you've got a few tracks which are slightly lesser known ones. And like the Tubular World album of Tubular Bells, each artist's done his own recording of each track. So for instance, you've got Omadon Pipe Tune, which was done by Manu Herrera and Robert Reed. You've got Woodhenge is being covered by Ryan Yard. Crime of Passion, a new recording of this, was done by Barry Palmer and Robert Reed. And you've got other ones likes of Mike's Reel done by Miguel Angel. And a lot of them sound very similar to the original Mike Oldfield recordings. There's one or two of them which actually do deviate quite a bit. The artists have put more of their personality into the track. And I think the ones that work best are the ones that have got more of each artist's personality over the ones which are just a straight up carbon copy. So there's a good selection of tracks. Like I say, you've got tracks from all parts of Mike's career. You've also got re-recordings of rare tracks such as the Royal Wedding Anthem, which Ruben Alvarez and Robert Reed have done. You've got like a re-recording of Crime of Passion, which is done a lot slower than the original version. And I think it works better actually because the lyrics suit the slower style of song better. And you've got Sally, I'm Just a Gorilla, which was an outtake from Platinum. The original album of Platinum had the Sally track on, but the sort of early pressings, they decided to change the track to Into Wonderland. So you've got a nice re-recording of this original Sally track, which is completely and utterly bonkers, but it's a lot of fun. Tom Newman's involved in that one, and Tom Newman's always like a hero when it comes to quirky things and eccentric things. And Les Penning's also involved in this one as well, as he is with other tracks. So it's an enjoyable album. It's for the most part, it's just a straight up covers carbon copy album, but there is a few tracks where they are worth listening to more because they're a lot sort of different. So I'm going to put Tubular All Stars, Rare and Reworked, the music of Mike Oldfield. I'll put this one as very good. And I'm going to put it before the orchestral Hergestrage as well. So next we'll have Robin Smith again. And he's done an album, Mike Oldfield Reimagined for Piano, 50th anniversary of the music and composer. Now again, like the previous album, the Tubular All Stars album, this is various tracks from different eras of Mike Oldfield's career. But unlike the last album, these are all just stripped right back to just basic piano with a little bit of guitar. And I think they work really well. I'm not usually a one for listening to just piano music on its own, but because it's Mike Oldfield and it's interesting to hear really stripped back versions of his music, I think they work better than most albums which are just piano. So I do enjoy this album. I don't play it all the time. I couldn't play it over and over again, but it's always nice to go back to and listen to it and enjoy it. There's a good selection of tracks and they're all played very well. Robin Smith's a very good pianist and arranger and stuff, and it's a very enjoyable listen. I wouldn't say it's an album I would go to all the time, but I do like putting it on every now and again when I'm just in the mood to listen to something very calm and soothing. So I'm going to put, again, for Robin's album, I'm going to put it as good, but I'm going to bump it past Orchestral Tubular Bells again, because this one works better than the orchestral album of Tubular Bells, I think. So finally, this has just come out about a week ago. It was the 50th anniversary of Hurgast Ridge, and there was a big convention on, which was absolutely brilliant. And Robert Reid and, again, the members of Tubular World have got back together again. So you got Ruben back, Les Penning's back, got Tom Newman back, Miguel, he's back. You've got Manu's back again. Unfortunately, Phil Spaulding passed away, and it's such a shame, because he was very enthusiastic about Mike Oldfield, and he came to the conventions and he enjoyed meeting the fans and all that, and he's very sadly missed. And he was a really good bass player as well. When you watch him on some of the early Mike Oldfield live performances, he's such a character, such a lively character, and it was such a shame when he passed away. But anyway, this new Hurgast Ridge album, it's just being recorded to coincide with the 50th anniversary event, and much like the re-recording of Tubular Bells, each artist have put their own kind of personality and stamp on each track. This one's not split up like the previous one. This one's just full on from start to finish. All the artists are involved with the whole lot all the way through. And it's a very good recording. I still prefer the original, of course, and that goes for all three mixes: the 1974 original, the boxed mix 76, and the 2010 remix. I still prefer those three versions, but this is a very, very good attempt, and I really like some of the little details which have been added to this version. And it's a one I'll go back to quite a bit, to be fair. I've listened to it a few times now, and I think I'll be listening to it quite a bit more as well. So again, I'm going to put it on par with the Tubular World re-recording of Tubular Bells. So that was me looking to 8 of the Mike Oldfield albums which have been covered by other artists. The 8 that I have in my collection, obviously there's going to be lots more out there, but these 8 are ones I particularly enjoy and which I have in my collection, and I just thought I'd make people aware of them because they are very good and they're worth getting. So notice I've never put an average or a weak album on this one, because I honestly do think that all of these are from excellent to good. For what they are, they're very well done. But I hope you've enjoyed this. I'm going to look into doing maybe more Mike Oldfield related videos. I've got one in mind for Robert Reid. I'm going to maybe tie all his projects together in one massive tier list, because he's worked with Magenta, he's worked with Cyan, he's been in other bands, Chimpanzee, loads of stuff. He's done his own solo album, Sanctuary, Compendium album with Steve Hackett and other big prog stars. So I'm going to maybe dive into all the stuff he's been involved with, Robert Reid, and I'm going to try and compile some kind of tier list. I don't know if I'm going to separate all these projects or if I'm just going to lump them all in one big tier list, because if I add up all these albums, there'll be about 20 odd of them, 26 again, like the Mike Oldfield ones. So anyway, we'll see, but that's just something I've got in mind for later on. Incidentally, I've met Robert Reid a couple of times, and he's a really nice guy, and he's very down to earth and humble. So And I've been listening to a lot of Magenta lately, and I just thought I might do a Robert Reed tier list at some point. So because it all ties in with the Mike Oldfield thing. But I hope you enjoyed this tier list. Not quite as long as the last one. It was just a few albums I kind of saw in my collection. I thought I'll rank these. So yeah, so thank you for listening, and until I return, I shall see you later.